Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Association of Coastal Towns, December 7th, 2023 public meeting. It's being held in Dewey Beach Life Saving Station as well via Zoom. With this, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call from each town. Fenwick Island.
Natalie Magdeburger from Fenwick Island.
Lewis.
Andrew Williams, Lewis.
Rosemary Hardeman, Bethany Beach.
Tim Saxton, South Bethany.
Stan Mills, City Road with Beach.
Joni Reich, Town of Henlopen Acres, and I'd like to introduce Sally Sluke, our town manager from 2 months, for 2 months.
Welcome.
Who
Welcome,
joined us
Sally.
and will be participating going forward here.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And Bill Stevens, Dewey Beach. With that, can we stand for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to do this as part of the non-public meeting. It's also as a motion. Can I get a motion for the approval of the June minutes?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First thing in the public meeting is the Center for Inland Bay update. Sir, please come aboard.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be back. Nowhere near as good as Michelle, but she asked me to stand in for her. So anyway, glad to be here. And just quickly, a couple of things that we're working on right now. You may be familiar with the United States Supreme Court's decision in the Sackett versus EPA case, which has basically, as far as we can tell, eliminated all protection of freshwater wetlands from Delaware. Delaware has no state-based freshwater wetland protection statute. And so to the extent that any of the communities have freshwater wetlands, I certainly know Rehoboth does, that are valuable and needing of protection, then it's certainly something to be aware of. We're very concerned as a watershed because freshwater wetlands are an integral and incredibly important part of the system. What they do for us, as well as they do for communities and folks around the state, is to help to capture stormwater and to find a better way than down a culvert to manage stormwater flows. But in that process and with vegetation, they tend to be able to get the nutrients and the sediments out of that water, which again, for water quality purposes, is hugely important for our watershed. And they have a whole lot of other values that you can imagine. First of all, they're just the most popular place in the world for beautiful and big trees and the habitats that certain critters in the state rely on exclusively in order to thrive, much less survive. So we've got a big problem. And so as a center, we will be working to make sure that we've got the science straight. We can help advise a process by the state to take another look at this. Senator Hansen introduced and passed through the legislature this past session a resolution asking DNREC to take another look at an options paper that they had done under a previous resolution on how it is that the state could implement a freshwater wetland protection statute. And so they'll be getting that feedback back to the Senate, back to the governor by the end of this month. And so based on that, I believe that interested legislators will be working to incorporate those suggestions into a new proposal and hopefully circulate that as a discussion draft so that communities, other interested parties around the state, certainly the Center for the Inland Bays, can weigh in and provide suggestions on what a program in Delaware should look like. So it's a heads up for those of you. I know with the lakes in Rehoboth, for example, it's now a critical issue because there is no backup. The federal government will not be there if there are impacts that you're concerned about. It's no longer jurisdictional water from a Corps of Engineers perspective. So we really are vulnerable in this state. So just wanted to mention that for everybody's interest, and we'll certainly keep you posted on developments there. Another thing I wanted to raise is a recurring theme, and Mayor Hardeman is very happy to see you're your paper on this issue is watershed resilience. It's no news to you that we're the lowest lying portion of the lowest lying state in the country. And so we're feeling very vulnerable. I'm sure you all are. As a matter of fact, I know you all are. And so just a heads up that with you, we'll be working with Senate EPW staff, Senator Carper's folks, and with Corps of Engineers to see if we can't build off the Back Bay study into something that is more robustly comprehensive for the entirety of the watershed. And if you look at maps, you'll notice that the study area in this current evaluation is not incorporating the entirety of our watershed. And there are a whole lot of issues related to resilience that are really critically important that you may not think of. Most of you are thinking about how do we keep our homes and our businesses protected, not to mention our lives. But there are also issues related to stormwater management. There are issues related to habitats. There are issues related to the things that have to be there in order for this environment to be a place that people want to come to recreate and, of course, come to live as they do in robust numbers these days. And so, again, something that gives us the opportunity to coordinate and cooperate with you all on to figure out what the suite of questions are, but certainly to have the Corps directed to do a comprehensive study of the resilience needs of our watershed so that from the coastal communities all the way up to Dagsboro and Millsboro and up to Georgetown, we're covered. Because so much of what you're experiencing in terms of resilience challenges are actually on the bay side, not on the ocean side of the dune line. So we would, again, want to work very closely with you to make sure that we've got a good bit of information in hand to begin implementation to protect and provide that resilience. What does that include? That includes things like living shorelines. It includes stormwater management. The town of Dewey certainly knows how we've been involved and will continue to be involved, but we've got projects that are consistent with that theme and that goal in a lot of different places throughout the watershed and affecting certainly your communities and your citizens. So we want to keep that up and we want to have the capacity to do that. Marsh restoration is another key part of this, a bit of protection for a lot of our communities. If those marshes disappear, then we'd have to pay the Corps of Engineers several $1 billion to provide the protection that nature is already giving to us as a matter of course. So we just need to be aware of that and do our best to fight back. Another bit of news, sort of related, we've gotten recently a grant through the Restore America's Estuaries, or RAE for short, to begin work on our Thompson Island Living Shoreline project. And as you may know from past discussions, we have a plan worked out with Delaware State Parks to actually do a restoration project around the entirety of Thompson Island to protect it from erosion forces and the other things that are happening that are threatening not only natural resources there, but the cultural resources that are abundant on the island as well. What this grant will do is allow us to start work on the southern portion of the island, which is the most exposed to waves and to sea level rise and erosion effects. And so we're very excited to be able to get started on that. And
So is that right? That's going to utilize some of the dredge material for the beneficial use or something? I think I heard.
That's what I
from
understood too.
there may be opportunities there, certainly on the canal side. I think for this particular portion of it, I don't know if we're going to have a need for that, but we will be building subsurface, subwater surface structures to help break up wave energy. And then we'll be building up with core logs and other technologies a shoreline that is resilient to the erosive forces that are there. I don't think it's going to require any beneficial use of dredge material. We will reserve that, generally speaking, for marsh restoration purposes, but there are some shoreline restoration efforts where that would be helpful. I don't know that this is one of those. And also in projects, we're getting ready to kick off on Sunset Park, a wonderful little project here in Dewey. And so we're looking forward to collaborating with the town and getting that project done, and very excited about that. We've got the Reed Avenue project that you may be familiar with, probably have been dragged down to take a look at that on a field trip on occasion too. So anyway, we are looking forward to continue that work with
Maybe
the
when it's
town.
not 100 degrees out.
Maybe a better time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great thing to see during the middle of winter, for that matter. And we're also doing a site visit with Sea Colony West to look at the prospect of putting in some best management practices for stormwater management there. So again, just an example of the many things that we're doing and working on, but I just wanted to give you all a quick heads up about all of that.
I have a question. Thank you, Christoph. That was very informative. I have one question about when you mentioned the Back Bay study. It seems to me that the area identified originally back in the early, 2012-13 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was far more extensive than what the actual study area is limited to. It went from Fenwick Island all the way up to Wilmington, basically, and all the watersheds were considered very vulnerable. And I agree with you that this study is limited even in what it studies about the Back Bay. Do you think realistically, I mean, it seems that DNREC is only willing to put up a certain amount of money, and this is what that money will cover. Do you have any hopes that that would be extended?
I know that's a challenge
Yeah.
because for any of these investments by the Corps, with very few exceptions, there is a cost share requirement.
Yes.
And so where there's a $10 million investment for a project, then the state is in for a substantial chunk. I would just say this, and your economic study that you're working with Danielle on is going to reinforce this in the end, is there's just too much at stake not to make those investments. And so what it becomes is an opportunity to continue the pitch for the good investments and the needed reviews by the Corps of Engineers. Mostly what we're looking for is implementation, right? What we want is the projects, but we need to have the basis for moving forward on those. And none of this is inexpensive. But as I mentioned, if we were asked the Corps to do it instead of Mother Nature, then those millions of dollars that we'd be spending on resilience building would be billions of dollars to protect us from the onslaught from what's in the offing for us through climate change. So, it's sort of like you can pay me now, you can pay me later,
Right.
but if you pay me later, you know what it's going to look like, and it's not a pretty picture. So there has been recent reluctance to really aggressively pursue those matches. But by the time these projects are coming into the fray, we may have different administrations and different takes on what that relationship looks like and what the legislature might be convinced to do in terms of providing supporting funding for these projects.
Because I remember too that when we did that study, when we had that group together for the Back Bay study, everybody put their heads together. I remember that Jesse had said something to the effect of, even when the projects are approved, don't expect DNREC to always be the non-federal partner.
Well, and there may be instances for particular projects where, let's say Sussex County, for example, might be the non-federal partner. I don't know what other options there may be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the state.
Right.
It just depends on the scale and scope and nature of the project to determine what the local partnership would look like. There could probably be some partnering in terms of, there may be a lead partner, but there would be an opportunity to do cost sharing even amongst the partners. So I'm not as familiar with those details, but I think that, where there is a will and where there's a need, there certainly can be a way. So the key is, what is it we need to do in the first instance, and then we can cross the next bridge as appropriate. But those are certainly big lifts when the time comes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make sure I understood. When we met the last time, you were talking about maybe doing your own study in parallel with the Corps. You've now decided to participate within the Corps study.
Yeah, well, we're exploring a few different options, and so there are different takes. So if you ask the Corps to participate in a project like this, first focus, not illogically, is going to be on infrastructure and structure and property protection, which is, I think, what the Back Bay study is primarily focused on. We've got a broader interest in resilience because we don't think it's any better really in the long term to be losing our habitat that's helping to create the fish and the crabs and all the things that we rely on as communities on the bay for also. And stormwater management is not outside the Corps' purview, but it isn't what they'll be looking at in the first instance. So these are hugely important issues. They just aren't captured in the typical bucket. So we'll work with the Department of the Interior, we'll work with others to see if there are other ways that we can accomplish some of these goals, to the extent that the Corps isn't. But the Corps can do an overarching study, and they do have a mandate for doing ecosystem restoration. And so we would hang a lot of our interest in this kind of study on that mandate. But yes, we're not going to do it on our own. We really would need partners
So
to
you
do
gave
that.
up that piece, you're just gonna go with, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would just add, Lewis, as you mentioned, that straddles also with the Bay Beach Association. So Christoph's point about the matching, they were very effective in collectively going to the legislature. And that was facilitated really by the group saying, you 2 or 3, go up to Dover and start banging on doors. ACT might consider something similar.
Christoph, if there's anything, obviously you've been very generous, coming out here and giving some updates. Please don't let it go the other way. If there's things that you need from us as you go forward, or things, if there's anything we can do, we're here for you also.
Well, and a source of projects and opportunities, and also an awareness from your all's perspectives. I see the Mayor Hardeman's issue of set of questions here and things like that. It's just very helpful to us to know what in particular folks in various communities are thinking about, what they're concerned about, because there's the basis for partnership. And so, yes, we would love to keep up that two-way street.
We're in the process of conducting internal studies of the towns, and then we're going to basically bring it all together and have see what is similar and what we can really focus on as a group, and where we're individually a little bit different, and bring that to the community.
And there are a whole bunch of partners, Rascal, University of Delaware, just a lot of folks and people and interest in this issue. That's one thing we don't have a paucity of. We may be a little short on money on the particulars, but we certainly aren't losing any sight of the opportunity and the concern that's driving people to look at this.
Appreciate you.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Christoph.
Next on is Jesse Hayden Denreck. I'm not sure if he's on the line. I don't believe so. When I sent out the email, I wanted to determine if he was going to be here, did not get a response. Jesse may not be here today.
That would be helpful to get an update from him. He missed, I don't think he made the last meeting either.
No, he didn't.
So it's been quite a long time,
All right, I will reach out to him right after the meeting, and I'll send an update to everyone in terms of what I find out. Number 12, Sea Grant update.
Hello.
Good to see everyone.
hi, Danielle.
Hi Danielle, how are you?
Yeah, so I just have a couple updates. This shouldn't take very long. Back in the spring, most of your towns participated in an evacuation planning workshop that I sponsored with DEMA and Sussex County. We're close to the statistical peak of hurricane season now. I put out an email recently. I've been able to acquire funds to pay for a number of rack cards and magnets that advertise the state's new Know Your Zone campaign. Basically, the state has a set of new evacuation zones based on an analysis that they did with the Army Corps, looking at population trends, development, and storm surge modeling and so forth. And there's a tool you can go to, very simple. You plug in your address and you see if you're in one and which zone you're in. And then these zones are designed to provide timely evacuation. The state and local authorities would call which particular zones in a sequence as necessary to safely evacuate people. I've heard from several of your towns, but I'm just mentioning again that we do still have a supply of these rack cards and magnets, and I'll send out the reminder email after our meeting, so that I hope you'll take advantage of that and put that out in town hall or at events and so forth. We're also, right now, it's just really at the discussion phase. We're thinking about maybe doing a special outreach effort related to flood insurance, trying to, reinforce what folks know, address some of the myths about flood insurance and risk management at the household level. So stay tuned. I'll provide more updates when we know. We're also thinking about rip current education as well. My program had done quite a lot of that in years past. I think most of your beaches have signage up for rip currents. I know we recently had a fatality in Rehoboth. And I think that individual was an out-of-town individual. I think Ocean City had a fatality in the spring that was also an out-of-town individual. But I would welcome partnering with beach patrols and your towns and really looking for ideas, beyond sort of the rack cards and the signage. I think the media has done a good job as far as the weather, the weather segment on the news. I see rip currents being mentioned pretty frequently these days,
It's true.
right? They're doing a good job. I think it's how do we reach maybe some of the visitors? I could use your ideas. So I welcome you reaching out, and I'll reach back out to you when I'm ready to really step into that and really, we're thinking of partnering with New Jersey on that as well, and maybe Maryland. I also wanted to ask if you would help us. We have Coast Day coming back this year. We tried to have it last year. The theme was weathering the storm, and then we had a storm, and we had to actually cancel it. And it was on a hiatus during COVID days. So hopefully we're back. It's October 1st, Sunday on campus in Lewis, 11 to 3. And this is a very usually well-attended event, but since it's been on hiatus, would you kindly, if you don't mind, I'll leave some here. If you wouldn't mind maybe putting them up in town hall or somewhere that has, public access. And then
We also have it electronically that we could add it to our websites.
I certainly have the link. Yes, I'm happy to do that. Okay.
If you can email it to the link, that would be great to all of us.
Yeah, I'll email it to all of you. That's great. Okay. I just wanted two other quick updates. Our staff has a new colleague, Brittany Haywood. She replaces Kate Fleming as our coastal ecologist. Brittany comes from DNRAC. She was in the wetlands branch for a long time, and then drainage. She's got a lot of expertise in living shorelines and wetlands and seagrasses and all kinds of wildlife. So if you have any concerns on those topics, I can put you in touch with Brittany Haywood. And then lastly, I'm also here representing Rascal. Our annual summit, which is normally in December, is going to actually be in January this year. That's because Dell Tech kind of pulled the rug out on our date from us. So we're going to most likely be having it on January 17th. And the focus is going to be on renewable energy topics. So I'll give you more updates at the next meeting, but just wanted to flag that for you. That's usually an all-day event, well attended, and we hope you can make it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Good to see you.
All right. With those updates, that concludes the agenda portion of our meeting. I ask for any of the mayors if there's any other business and they would like to discuss.
Well, I was just curious for future agendas. We've looked at wind energy as a collective and, beach nourishment and some other things. Are there other, I think we may have touched on this in the past, is, one of the things that one of my residents brought up to me is, as we all live in resort areas of heavily trafficked, is whether we should maybe
Here, get it out of everybody's way.
focus on, in particular for us, emergency management services, fire department and those things. I know one of the things they've talked about is the fact that, we're volunteer based still, and they can't afford to live in the area. So how that puts our residents in jeopardy, and also just, from being able to staff up the viability of it from a long-term standpoint. I know the county has mentioned that it may eventually become something that's professionalized and run out of the county, but until then, where we're at, we had a fire in Lewis the other day that we have 3 people that are residents that are able to volunteer, and only Gordon was able to show up by himself.
Oh, my.
Others eventually showed up, but the time to react to it. So I just raised that one as one that we probably all struggle with that for cover, EM, particularly volunteer fire coverage in the area. So maybe that's something we may look to
Okay.
add to a
I'll add
future.
it. I will add it.
I think it's interesting because I still get fascinated how the counties fought the bill
Mhm.
to help make it more professional. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why they did that, because they put all like you've said, they put all the burden on the municipalities, really just on the municipalities. And that's, I don't think that's fair, because they service more than municipalities.
And we give them a small amount. The amount that Lewis gives our fire department doesn't cover hardly anything at all. It's a drop in the bucket. And I'm sure that's true for most, but, so I was, fundraising through community. I talked to Millsboro's town manager, Jamie Burkett. He said they have a 2% to their permits there. And that goes to the directly, almost like a impact fee for them.
We just adopted a fee
Similar
per
thing.
resident, per property. And on the tax bill.
So I imagine that Rehoboth is covered you
Yes,
too. Is that how
yes.
that works there?
So our funds that we collect from our residents will now go to Rehoboth.
Do you mind me asking?
$5.
Is
It's a
that,
flat, that's a flat.
It's a flat fee that we're gonna add on the tax bill.
yeah, we charge 53 for ambulance service per household.
City of Rehoboth just donates.
That's what we end up doing.
Yeah.
It's almost, this day and age, it's almost laughable in terms of what they cost for them.
The budget is $3 million for the fire department to run in Rehoboth.
Yeah, we just
all year.
recently gave them some ARPA funds to redo, like a dormitory area there, and it's pretty horrible. So these guys are,
They're really hustling to do fundraising.
Well, remember, we need to be mindful that beach volunteer fire department to the downtown station. They have a station out on Route 1, and then I think we share one with down.
yeah, we're in the similar boat where Nassau, and then there's one we share, and then we have the downtown location as well, so they're spread thin. So I just thought I'd mention that, this is.
Okay, will do. Rosemary? One thing that, as we continue to have these conversations around elements of climate change and Denrick and everything, a thought came to mind whether we should also be inviting any of our state representatives to these meetings to give updates from a legislative standpoint. So just
I think that would be
Process.
helpful.
Yeah, for us.
I think we should get back to inviting Todd as well.
I think that would be helpful. We could ask
Yeah,
him
I'm
about
sure-
that topic.
And I'm sure Russ Uxel will be happy to attend this type of meeting. It's environmentalism is of interest to us.
Okay, will do. I'll add that for the next meeting.
While we're on that topic, I did want to mention Lewis is actually going to we actually have an environmental subcommittee as part of it was a breakout of our LPC, and they've been already meeting and talking about things like lot coverage and such. So they actually are going to host, and I'm going to be part of that, September 19th. There's 2 workshops. One's from 2 to 4:30 and the other's from 5 to 7:30. So it might be interesting, if you're going to see, Amy Marasco runs that for our town, that committee, and she's done a really good job of outreaching to schools and such, and she's using a concept of writing your hopes on these footprints, and the idea that people will come there and sort of share their thoughts as a community. So that's the 19th, if you're interested in that.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the event? What's it called?
It's in the Lewis Planning Commission Environmental Subcommittee, but it's a public workshop that I'm talking about on the 19th. The evening session's at 5, afternoon too.
Andrew, what is your lot coverage now?
So general commercial, you can have 95%.
Okay, what about residential?
Residential in town, you can have 60%. It's like 50% of your house, and then like your driveways and others can be, and then on Lewis Beach, it's 65% lot coverage is allowed.
Yeah, we have 40 for the house.
Really?
And then,
And do you have a minimum, how big are the lots?
well, we have about 5,000 square feet in the R1 district and 7,000 in R2. And then we just instituted an ordinance limiting impervious surfaces, because we were having, on the east side, we were having people build mansions, and then they didn't come down, they didn't want to take care of the property, so they put all concrete and rock around the rest of the house. So,
We have a 20% limit up for the house, and a 20% limit on accessories. So 40%
Mhm.
can be filled in and 60% is open space, and our lot size is 20,000.
20,000.
20,000, wow.
I think that's it on Lewis Beach, they're more like 5,000.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at.
I think that's the same in Rehoboth, right?
So,
But I'd be interested in seeing what you did on your impervious surface ordinance.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I think it needs some tweaking. We're going to be working with our building inspector to see how it needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Are any of your calculus for your stormwater management based on lot coverage for any of your towns? Do you charge a stormwater management fee?
No.
We don't charge anything.
No, we don't.
No,
we're investigating that, but we'll probably need another 6 to 8 months.
BPW charges a $10 straight fee, and not really sure what it covers, honestly. I don't think it's matching what it should cover. That's probably gonna be re-examined also.
Yeah, we have an impervious ordinance. We've had it for some years, probably
Obviously, on
Mhm.
almost a decade.
Mhm.
And it seems to, I mean, we've seen a true transition with, we still get everybody covering up the, nobody wants to cut grass anymore, but that they're using pavers that are pervious.
Pervious.
Yeah.
is anybody banning artificial turf?
We don't have that.
No, we just don't
You
call
don't
it, we don't call it natural.
It counts toward lot coverage?
There's a potential pollution issue, contamination issue with it,
Mhm.
with these forever chemicals. I just wonder.
Depending
Yes,
on
I'll
the
give you a
turf,
funny story
they're
about
seeing
that.
it in sports now, for all the turfs that we
Right,
put on
right.
high school fields.
All right. Any other business?
No.
Mayor?
I think, just a reminder, I think, I don't really remember the charter, but I think in October, we're supposed to vote in the next president,
No, I think.
so that
Are you throwing in your hats
No,
there?
Rosemary's next.
You'll do it today, won't you? Let me look at that.
I think it's later. I think it's
No,
November.
And it's a 2-year term.
It voted. My recollection, Bill, you might want to check the charter, but.
You're right.
My
No, you're
recollection
right.
is that
You're
we voted
exactly
in so that at the November meeting, we can approve the minutes, and then,
You can
and
go to
then
the
by the
bank.
first of the year, you can take the minutes, approved minutes to the bank. I'm
You get the
serious,
checkbook.
that's the process, I believe.
But Cliff, you'll be helpful.
You look too eager, Bill.
He's smiling.
No comment.
If that's the case, I wish I could read faster. It will be on the next agenda.
Thank you, Steve.
I think-
Thank you, Stan.
I think,
Keep us
When
organized.
we didn't vote for the vice president, last time we did it,
Yeah.
We did it after, we gotta just,
why don't we just
Do it at the
all
same
at
time.
once?
Yeah.
Who would that be? Oh, Johnny.
I'll be your understudy anytime. I'll be anybody's
All right.
understudy. I like that.
Meeting got out of control. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.